Okay. So, we were talking about the third line. The best excellence is to have great altruism. So, we talked a little bit last time about some of the benefits of bodhicitta, the altruistic intention. And in thinking about bodhicitta, and the more I try and cultivate it, it becomes completely clear that without equanimity, bodhicitta is impossible. Yeah? And equanimity is the first prelude. It's not even included in the 7 cause and effect instructions, or in equalizing and exchanging self with others, which are the 2 primary methods to develop bodhicitta. But, when you really think of it, because bodhicitta requires that we have acceptance and great compassion for each and every living being, no matter who they are, how they treat us, what their political views are, any of this stuff that we usually use to discern, who's on my side and who do I have to be suspicious and afraid of. And, with bodhicitta, you can't have suspicion and fear of sentient beings, and you can't play favorites. Yeah, it just doesn't work. I'm not even talking about like practically when you are trying to teach people. I mean, clearly that doesn't work. But in your own mind, you can't develop love and compassion with partiality. Yeah, the two don't go together. They don't compute. So I think it's very important that we put a lot of attention on developing equanimity. Yeah, love especially makes people feel good. Compassion is a little bit harder because you have to look at their suffering. Love, it goes with love, light, and bliss, but which we all want, quick, cheap, and easy. But to really even having equal-hearted love for people, there's got to we've got to get rid of the partial mind that is attached to the people we like, who are friends, maybe relatives. Get rid of the anger at the people who are enemies and maybe relatives. and the apathy towards strangers. Yeah. And yet, when we look at our experience, yeah, all day long, every year, we're constantly evaluating people and putting them in one of those 3 categories. And then being attached to the friends, having aversion and dislike for the enemies, and, not caring at all about the strangers. Now, some people say that, even if you've developed equanimity, you may still have enemies, but you don't, you aren't partial against them. Having enemies in the sense that there may be people who try and harm you or get in your way or things like that. So in one way, people say, well, you just have enemies, but you don't have this. You have a totally different emotional reaction to them. On the other hand, people can say, well, actually, you cease to have enemies because when you really are looking at the fact that everybody equally wants happiness and that everybody's been kind to you before and everybody has been everything to you before, then, putting them in a category of temporary enemy in this life makes no sense. Yeah. And if you listen to His Holiness, when he talks about going worldwide and meeting so many people, he always says, I have friends everywhere. He doesn't say, I have friends everywhere and I have enemies, but I have compassion for them. So I think the meaning kind of boils down to the same thing. Yeah. But, you know, I would think if you developed real, genuine equanimity, you would see everybody as a friend, but know that some people at this moment don't reciprocate that feeling towards you. Yeah. So from your side, you wouldn't call them an enemy. You just know they don't reciprocate that right now. But from your side, you still see them as a friend. And that happens in normal life too, doesn't it? That we have friends, people who we see as friends, who maybe stopped liking us a long time ago. Yeah. But from our side, we still have that, you know, oh, it's a friend. It's just something's happened temporarily. Okay. So then the thing is, well, how do you get rid of, the attachment and aversion and apathy? And the usual method they prescribe is by seeing that if you take a very broad perspective of many lifetimes, everybody's been our friend before, everybody's been our enemy before, everybody's been a stranger before. And they give the example that, if the person on this side gives you $1,000 today, they're your friend. And if a person on this side steals money from you, they're your enemy. But that's today. Then tomorrow, if this person changes their mind and gives you $1,000 and that person steals your money, then this person's become a friend and that person's become an enemy. So it really doesn't make any sense to have friends and enemies because these categories change all the time. And that's really true. They change totally, And even with people that we may feel, oh, this is my long-term friend, there's always days on which they become an enemy. Yeah, you may love them dearly, and there's some days when they're in the enemy box. Because, well, I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, but so the usual way they explain it is just that things are so transient and, way too flexible, so these categories just don't make sense, let alone having attachment for the people in the friend category, aversion or anger, hostility in the enemy category, and apathy towards the third. Here when we say enemy, it doesn't mean, like we're fighting in a war. It just means somebody you don't get along with, somebody that you feel threatened by. Yeah, that you just don't get along with very well. Okay, so you don't have to be, have war declared against them or anything like that. Okay, but and I think that's a very good method to generate equanimity. But what I found is more potent for me is to look more closely at how the criteria I use to put people in the attachment category, the aversion category, or the apathy category to start with. And when I really look deeply, who do I have attachment for? It's always the people who are nice to me. Yeah? They're nice to me, they agree with my ideas, they think I'm great. When other people criticize me, they support me. When I suffer loss, they comfort me. When they remember my birthday, or they don't remember my birthday according to what I feel like that year. They're the people who do what I like. Yeah? And they think well of me, they agree with my ideas, they don't criticize me in public. Yeah, in fact, they praise me in public and tell other people all my good qualities. And, even if I'm in a bad mood, they still care about me. I mean, these people are terrific from their own side. I'm impartial. Yeah, that's the way it looks. Yeah, like these are the qualities these people have from their own side. I'm just impartial. and happen to meet these people that are so wonderful. But it also happens that they're so wonderful in relation to me, because they do all these things for me. And then also, coincidentally, the people that are the enemies that I don't like, they're the ones who criticize me, who blame me, when I didn't do anything wrong, who blame me even if I do something wrong. But they're not supposed to blame me when I make a mistake. They're supposed to be patient and tolerant and forgiving. But they aren't. And they criticize me in public. And they talk about me behind my back. And they steal my stuff. Yeah. And they don't support me. And they let it be known to the world. And they're mean. And they, I walk into the room and they kind of turn away. And they're rude. Yeah. Sometimes they might even punch me in the nose. That's how I got such a big nose. But you'd think it would be flatter by all the punches, but it got bigger. So, it's always, these are the people. But I don't, and it's, like I said, coincidentally, it's the people who are mean to me. But when I look at them, I think I'm seeing them as objective. This is who they really are. Yeah. And so that's why I cannot understand why in the world somebody else would like that person. Or why in the world somebody else would not like somebody who I am very attached to and I think is the cream of the crop. Yeah. And then everybody else, they're just like obstacles that I have to navigate around. Yeah, when you're driving on the highway, they aren't real people in cars who have emotions and needs. They're just people who are in your way that you have to get around to get where you're going. Yeah, when you get on a plane, everybody else is a competitor for the seat you want. Yeah, and everything, it's, those people are just strangers, like they don't count, So the people, when we call, we have to, do something, by calling a company or something. They're strangers, who cares? People at the gas station, who cares? All the people who do the electric power and, and the sewer system and all that, we don't know them. The garbage collectors, we don't know. We don't care. Okay? So when I look at like how I get into this thing of friend, enemy, and stranger, attachment, aversion, apathy, yeah, it isn't that these people have those qualities from their own side. It's I'm judging and evaluating everybody in terms of how they relate to me at this very moment. And I see that as inherently existent, permanent, concrete, and the way who they are from their side. And so everybody should see people the way I see them. And so that's why it's so amazing that I won't mention names because I'm growing up, that some candidates for president in one of the parties, that these candidates, we can't imagine why people in their right minds would support them. Because we're interested in everything that concerns us. And people who agree with our values are good, and people who don't agree with our values are, downright stupid from their own side. We're impartial, we're objective. Okay? So, this goes on our entire lives. Yeah? Even from the time we're infants, some babies, they see somebody, they start crying. There's a sense of fear and suspicion right away. Yeah. And so always, putting people in these categories. And so for me, really understanding how my mind does that, then, and so how ludicrous it is. I mean, it really is ludicrous, isn't it? Isn't that like the optimum of self-centered thought? Yeah? You're not even seeing people as human beings with emotional needs or physical needs we're not seeing them as, as living creatures who are exactly like us. Yeah, we're just seeing them, objectifying them into who benefits me, who potentially harms me or has harmed me, and who just, gets in the way and I don't care about. Yeah, and so when I really think of that, and that's the mentality behind these emotions and these categories, it's like, I don't want to be like that. It's like, I don't want to be that kind of person. That's too awful. It's too awful to be like that. So that I find very helpful personally for breaking down these categories and these feelings. Yeah. And also, to remember, and this goes with the first method that is usually employed regarding that these things change all the time, is that when you consider past lives, everybody's been everything in relationship to us. Yeah. And whoever it is that we cherish and we're so attached to this life, in 100 years, we're not going to know. We might be born in totally different universes. Or even if we know, we're going to be in different bodily forms, and we're not going to recognize them. And so similarly, the people who I think are very dear now, they're going to become strangers or enemy in the future. And people who I think of as enemies now, they may be the people that I think are fantastic in my next life. Yeah, and I really saw this kind of changeability when I was traveling in Asia, because, all the Westerners, actually all the foreigners, it doesn't matter what country you're from, as long as you're not Indian, that you kind of stick together, you bond together. Or if you're living in the Tibetan community, everybody who's not Tibetan in some way bonds together. And so, if you're traveling somewhere because it's dangerous and people rip off your stuff in train stations very easily, then you always try and travel with somebody else. So you wind up traveling with people who you normally, by just looking at them, it's like, that's not somebody I want to get to know. Yeah, but you wind up traveling with them simply because they're another foreigner and you kind of need each other. And then in the process, because you're traveling together, you get to know them and they become a very nice person. You see that they're a very nice person after all, and that all your judgments about the color of their hair and the kind of jewelry they got in McLeod Ganj and everything else that you were judging them on is off the wall. Yeah. So even in this life, you can see it very clearly how relationships change. Okay, so, I think it's really good if we spend some time thinking about this very, very deeply, all these different arguments, all these different ways of approaching it, to help us kind of cut off this judging, discriminating mind, and instead to see, at the end of the day, and also at the beginning of the day, we're all, and the middle of the day, we're all exactly the same in wanting happiness and not suffering. And if we look at that in each and every living being, including the ants and the cockroaches and, and the skunks and whoever else is around, then it really helps to open our mind quite a bit. Yeah, because we're seeing something very, very important. Actually, the most important thing in each living being, which is their wish to be happy and to be free of suffering. Yeah, and so you train yourself. So when you look at people, you look at that, you look in their hearts, and you see that, and you stop looking at all the superficial stuff. So I think that's why His Holiness can say that he has friends everywhere he goes. Okay, but if we're bodhisattva wannabes, we have to work at this one first. Yeah, quite important.
Short story.
Mm-hmm.
When I was from the ages of 7 to 10, I had a best friend who was like the best. I mean, we were totally inseparable. We had the same values, the same understanding. I spent all my time at her house. And then my mother remarried and moved. So I haven't seen her since I was in high school. And so last summer when I was at my sister's, we looked her up on Facebook. And like there she is, the same, except her hair is white. Same smile, same sparkly eyes, same dimples, same everything. It's, whoa, that's my friend. And I started scrolling down, and she's like, Ted Cruz, blah, 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 blah. Ted Cruz, blah, 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 blah. She's like all over promoting Ted Cruz and his values and how he wants to treat the world. I mean, this has been my model for friendship my whole life.
Wow.
If somebody relates to me like that person and I related, we are buds. Right? And so I've been working with this for months now.
Yeah.
You're supporting Ted Cruz and how he is.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It would be interesting to talk to her.
Someday I will.
Yeah.
I will. But it was just
Yeah.
exactly that.
Yeah. Okay.